You are looking at Modular Frame Factory, producing total of 180 modular frames per minute. This factory is composed from one universal factory blueprint, and this Satisfactory blueprint is not an ordinary blueprint. As the most eagle-eyed of you can notice, this blueprint is bigger than standard 4x4 blueprint designer. In fact, footprint of this blueprint will require 5x5 designer. Nevertheless, it was completely made in vanilla Satisfactory in 4x4 blueprint designer. And today in this video, I will explain all about this very minor trick. And to make it useful, I would use this trick for my latest Modular Frame Factory. If you ever made a lot of blueprints, at some point you will discover Satisfactory feature that allow to place blueprints inside of the blueprint designer itself. And when you start to make template exterior walls, you can discover how blueprint designer is calculating its collision hitbox. Blueprint designer only care about the state when any part of the blueprint do not overlap the edge of the designer with its own collision hitbox. So anything beyond this hitbox line also counts as a normal placement. Well, while you have at least one part inside of the blueprint designer itself, and better yet, it would save as a part of the normal blueprint. So this glitch, or feature, or trick, or exploit, well, depending on your preferred will also work in all three dimensions. So we can extend our blueprints in the vertical plane as well. The sky is the limit. And yeah, in Satisfactory case it's like 2 kilometers or something. While it can seem rather useless for extended factory with the blueprint border denying connected belts, well, there is a set of tricks working around that. If you place conveyor lifts, mergers or splitters on the edge of the blueprint border, you can snap conveyor lift from the inside of the actual blueprint designer area. Also, there are some things that doesn't really work, for example, pipe wall holes will not work as a connecting point, while things like conveyor lift holes and pipe floor holes actually work for the vertical connections. Also, power lines can be extended without any hassle over the edge of the designer. And in this manner, you can go for relatively big interconnected factories in vanilla 4x4 blueprint designer. Almost every month, I see someone claiming this as groundbreaking paradigm of satisfactory gameplay. But well, let's be real. In the last couple of months, I have seen at least like 3 or 4 different Reddit users mentioning this feature. I have seen at least like 2 YouTube channels actually showcasing that, although those channels are relatively small. Also, I have seen like mentions of that in my comment sections, at least like half a dozen times. But well, my comment sections are usually full of like hardcore blueprint enjoyers, so there's that. And well, nothing groundbreaking actually happened. And if you really want to have a big factories, big blueprints, you can always download one single mod. Also, once you create them, those big blueprints usually work just fine without the mod. So you can have full vanilla game with set of big blueprints made on the modded build. In the best case scenario, you are saving maybe half a dozen extra clicks or hassle of installing a single mod, well, at the price of spending enormous amount of time fiddling with the vanilla blueprint designer. But there is an actual use case outside of just typical YouTube clickbait material. So, without further ado, let's talk about that.
Unleash the beans, unleash the beans, unleash the beans.
One particular use case that I have in mind is all about exterior of the factory. When you are creating blueprint factories, most of the time you will end up with a box. With clever combination of blueprint stacks, you can break this pattern quite a lot. But still it is a box most of the time. Another option is to create decorative blueprint covers to snap on your exteriors and break up silhouette of the box. This is a nice idea. Better yet, this is exactly the idea that is totally workable with today's video blueprint trick. So instead of having 2 separate blueprints, one for factory, another for exterior, we can make just one. Not long time ago, I started creating an alternative set of blueprints for Satisfactory blueprint only challenge. First, it was all about modular smelters for iron, copper, steel, deuterium, quartz and concrete. Then I have created this small factory producing 360 reinforced iron plates per minute. And by the way, it was done with one universal blueprint, and now I want to create Modular Frame Factory in the same style. My main concern here is convenience of connections. Reinforced iron plate factory have rather cramped maintenance shaft. So, for the Modular Frame Factory, I want to increase the size of the maintenance shaft by using extra space outside of the blueprint designer. But before showcasing exterior construction techniques, let's talk about the factory itself. Previously, I was making blueprint factories producing everything on board from the ground up. On the one side you input raw resources, on the other side you get the finished product. Then you are making second step in production chain while also supplying it with the raw resourcing and bouncing the first item to the second factory, then to the third, fourth, etc, and there you have like 10 factories. Yeah, I want to make something different. This time around, I want to try to make factories with several steps in production chain all on board. Only difference is the import of refined ores in form of ingots. And the idea over here is to have 3 layers of factories. One layer for the raw resources, second layer for the actual usable products, and the third layer for the space elevator parts. Also, I want to work around magnitude of 7.5, 15 and 30 units per minute. Add to that my total love of Mark III belts as the main blueprint driver, and here is the schematic. Since I do not really want to push this factory to 30 modular frames per minute in single blueprint, I have the opportunity to use stitched iron plates as the modular frame precursor. Add to that iron wire alternative recipe, and we can totally avoid any copper in this factory. On the modular frame front, this time around most sensible option is steel frame recipe as the lowest power draw option. While bolted frame recipe is always tempting, it is only making sense if you want to totally skip steel and use cast screws recipe as well, the screws recipe. And this is it for the schematic. So let's do the exterior, the fun part. Unleash the beans. Alright, so this is our testing bench, and there are several things that I want to change with this blueprint. I already done the whole thing, but I want to make several adjustments. This is sort of like the great showcase of how much things you can create with this trick, exploit, etc. First of all, you could not really place any extra things if they are outside of your blueprint designer. So for example, if you place belt like this and save this blueprint, it will not be saved. But if you change the color of one of the walls and save this, actually that will work. So for example, if you go for the blueprint and just plop it somewhere over here, you will notice that the color will change, but the belt will not be there. So if you want to add extra new parts, well, you'll need to make everything from the get-go. So let's actually do that. You need to create your extension first. Here's the new extension, and if you are creating the blueprint from the get-go, so you go for the empty blueprint designer, you select your created extension and just place it into desirable position. Notice that you could not really like overlap the edge of the blueprint designer and make things flush, and this is really important for the normal walls. You will not be able to put your normal walls flush with the rest of the blueprint. But for the painted beams, it's sort of like not an issue, because painted beams, they have their collision hitbox in the middle of the actual beam. So when you extend the painted beam from the actual blueprint designer, it will be flush with your extension made from the painted beams. So yeah, painted beams, steel beams as well, those things are as usual your go-to thing to create interesting things. And obviously from this point, you just create the rest of the blueprint, you delete your entry walls and just save the blueprint like that. So what if you want to actually create different extension and just modify your existing extension on the finished blueprint? Well, it's pretty simple. You just, well, delete the extension that you already placed there. So here we go, let's delete the whole thing. And then you just go for, well, probably the floor. I have the benefit of actually having the first floor pretty much empty over here, so I can just go over here, take my shell. And very important feature of, well, things like that is to use your nudge mode with button H. By placing everything in nudge mode, you can align things pretty easily. So yeah, this thing looks nice. So let's plop it. So here's our new extension, and now we have all the LED lights, LCDs. Space Engineer's habit of calling those panels LCDs. Man, I wish if we had like scripts like in Space Engineers in the Satisfactory. That would be so cool to control your factories. So yeah, this looks not bad. And by the way, those like strips, oh yeah, this is just decent amount of light. Yeah, this is exactly what I was hoping for. Yeah, this is the thing. Also, I want to change exterior of this factory, the color of this factory. I want to color all my factories, and how much I can say factory when I'm making video about Satisfactory and how I make factory blueprint, I don't know. But whatever, this is the gradient tool, pretty much the first search in the Google, and this is like cssgradient.io, really handy tool. Also, it's kind of generate the CSS code if you are doing web design. Also, there are different types of the gradients, really nice tool, but we need just simple linear progression. I need 9 steps, so this is relatively easy, and yeah, I can just adjust things with the slider or just type something manually, like for example 99 or 88%, whatever, that works. Also, when I started to create the gradient, I realized that yes, I have total of 9 steps, but I need to have 10 colors because there are a total of I think 20 even steps, so it is not like 19. And yeah, this is bizarre, so I just decided to go for the corners. And on the corners you will always have those shadows, and with such a huge amount of steps in your gradient, most of the time it will be not noticeable. So yeah, here's your design hack. So here you go, the corners. I am skipping 1 step in the gradient and it totally works. So there is not a lot of machinery to actually place in this blueprint. This is relatively uncondensed blueprint, if you can say that. Only trick over here is to place 5 assemblers on the final floor, and this is relatively easy when you are making those connections through the ceiling mounts. So yeah, you can have all your assemblers flush with the edge of the blueprint. You just place your ceiling mount over here, then you connect the conveyor lift, and then you connect your splitters or mergers. The manifold over here is not the optimal one, so you can make everything way more condensed, but since I have a lot of space, I just made something, you know. Then I have those assemblers for stitch iron plates, total 2 of them. They are being mirrored and fed into the manifold, and I'm feeding them directly with the iron plates from here, from 2 constructors. Kinda nice setup over here. And we have our iron ingots over here. This is like huge manifold going zigzagging through whole blueprint and ending up over there in the manifold out. And over here in the first floor we have our iron wire for our stitch iron plates over here, and then we have a bunch of constructors for our steel pipes feeding on the steel ingots. Once again, this is the manifold setup for the ingots as well. So over here we are inputting our steel ingots. They go all the way through the manifold over here, then zigzagging through the floor and going directly into the manifold out over there on the final floor. So here's the final floor, and here we have our steel ingot out for the manifold. Once you are done stacking your factory in the game itself, we need to connect our manifolds, and there are a total of 3 manifolds and 1 power connection. So we are taking our conveyor lifts and we are just extending our manifolds. Either way will work, you just listen into the audio cue, and for the power you just, well, connect to blueprints. It's relatively easy. So here we go, this is the blueprint 1, this is the blueprint 2, and this is how you connect your manifolds. And well, I'm thinking about actually adding ladder over here, because this way it will be even easier to connect everything to everything. So yeah, this is the Modular Frame Factory, which is totally modular, you know? So this was the way how I'm using this trick in Satisfactory. This is definitely a minor exploit, but well, you never know when the exploit becomes the feature and vice versa. For example, like Hyperloop Cannon, this thing was an exploit, but when developers were actually porting Satisfactory to Unreal Engine 5, they actually made it the part of the game. So you never know. Also, well, everyone have their own opinion. I'm kinda curious, what are your thoughts about this blueprint designer trick? Will you use that in your own designs, or maybe you are just better off using bigger blueprint designers with the mods? Well, leave your thoughts down below. And as always, my blueprints are available for free, no strings attached. Well, just like, share and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice one. And until next time, Yakez out.